Turning now to the documents dismissal, we have Brad Moss, friend of the show, joining us. Good to see you, man. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about this dismissal and just explain the basics of what's happened here. Let's put this up there on the screen. The judge, Florida Judge Eileen Cannon, has dismissed the Trump classified documents case on the grounds that Special Counsel Jack Smith's office, according to her, is unconstitutional. Can you give us the legal rationale for the judge's decision and some of the background that led to this dismissal?
Sure. So this is a strictly procedural issue. None of this has to deal with the merits of what was alleged against Donald Trump or his co-defendants. The premise of the challenge was that the Office of Special Counsel, the appointment of Jack Smith, is not permissible in its current structure under what are called the Appointments Clause and the Appropriations Clauses in the U.S. Constitution. The basic idea is that Jack Smith is not a proper inferior officer, as it's termed. He's too independent from Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. He's not properly placed in that position, and that Congress did not delegate to the Justice Department the ability to create this position and put Jack Smith there. It's not concluding that the Justice Department otherwise couldn't have brought this case. It's simply saying Jack Smith's office is not permissible under these constitutional provisions. It had to have been brought by the Justice Department or through a proper legislative appointment. It can't be done this way. And the funding he was relying upon is impermissible. This ruling flies in the face of 20 years of institutional precedent and case law, flies in the face of what came out of the Mueller cases when there were similar challenges. But this is what Judge Cannon concluded yesterday.
I mean, is it as absurd as it sounds? Is there anything to this? Because I mean, this would see the other case tossed out. It just sounds ridiculous, but I'm not a lawyer. Is it ridiculous?
So here's the thing. Lawyers don't ever like to say something is completely ridiculous unless they're brazenly biased. I'll say it's out there. It's a rogue decision in my view. Can I say that this Supreme Court, which just laid out that really wild immunity ruling 2 weeks ago, won't back this up? Who the heck knows? I'll say there's no precedent for what she concluded. Mueller, who was a private citizen at the time he was brought in, was challenged on the exact same provisions. Both the district court and the D.C. Circuit rejected those challenges. Every single one of these appointments over the last 20 years since the regulations were put in place in the aftermath of the independent counsel statute, all of those appointments were challenged. All of those challenges were rejected. Judge Cannon has basically relied upon various dissenting opinions from Justices Alito and Thomas in different Supreme Court rulings to try to craft her rationale. This will now go to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit's already rejected Judge Cannon analysis on issues twice. We're going to see what they think of this analysis.
So, Brad, we saw there was one clip. Crystal flagged this, actually, and wanted to ask you about it. Maybe we can play it for you. It's Barbara McQuaid. She's a lawyer talking about how this could be, quote, a blessing in disguise. Let's play it. I want to get your reaction.
Well, look, I think it's a terrible decision. I think it's absolutely wrong on the merits. But going forward, I think this could actually be a blessing in disguise because it gives Jack Smith an opportunity to appeal the case immediately. So many of these other decisions were within the judge's discretion as she was slow walking the case. But this is one where it's immediately appealable. And I think she is so clearly wrong on the law that the 11th Circuit will reverse. Now, Donald Trump probably goes to the Supreme Court, and we have to wait for a decision there. But even if ultimately the Supreme Court rules in favor of Donald Trump, the case is not over. All that means is a special counsel can't bring this case. There is nothing then to stop the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida from bringing this case. Now, certainly it means lengthy delay. There will be no trial before the election, but I think we were headed in that direction anyway. He could even decide, the Justice Department, to take this out of the special counsel's hands and go directly to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, refile the case immediately and get back on track, perhaps with a different judge.
So what do you make of that and that argument?
So most of what she said is basically accurate in the sense that this will get appealed at the 11th Circuit. I fully expect the 11th Circuit to reverse. I have no idea what the Supreme Court will say. I'm skeptical that, at least for now, especially in the next few months, that the Justice Department is going to try to refile the case through the U.S. Attorney's Office or anything like that. It would look brazenly political. There's no point to it. There's not going to be a trial before the election anyways. This will still have to play out over the coming months. But putting that part aside, the Justice Department as a whole, as an institution, isn't going to want to just lay down and accept the idea that Judge Cannon decides that 20 years of established institutional and legal precedent is thrown out the window when it comes to special counsels. This is what they've done. This is what they put into place after the independent counsel days and the wild days of Ken Starr. They wanted to have an established process that kept it in-house. They're going to want to fight this up at least to the Supreme Court. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. If the Supreme Court says otherwise, then it's a whole new ballgame. We'll see what justice does at that point.
Got it. Ryan, any questions?
Yeah, just curious what the kind of politics of the judiciary are here. How does it benefit a judge like an Eileen Cannon, and maybe not talk specifically about her, but how does it benefit a judge like Eileen Cannon to be so far out there, against precedent? Like, what does this do for a judge's kind of politics as they're trying to rise up through the ranks?
So it's always the idea of, the feverish dissent, someone who's trying to craft a new way of approaching these legal policies, saying, I know this is how you've always done it. Doesn't mean it's right. I have a different ideological and constitutional analysis that I believe is appropriate here. I'm going to strike out here and outline what I believe to be the correct interpretation. Even if she gets overruled, which I expect she will, it lines her up on the idea, kind of what you were hinting at, that a future Republican president, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else, might look at her as someone who views the Constitution and the authorities outlined there more along that sort of unitary executive style and less along those bureaucratic state of what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 decades. It goes back to that idea that Donald Trump always pushed, that everything runs through him. The office of the president can hire and fire the special counsel at any time, and that all these regulations mean nothing. It all comes down to Article 2 and nothing more.
Got it. Well, I'm very interested to see how this goes in the 11th Circuit and eventually to SCOTUS. My final question is just on timing. This thing was already getting kicked, right, Brad? This is just going to extend this. Even if it does get brought eventually to trial, what dates are we even looking at now? 2025, 2026?
You're probably looking at 2025, and that's only if Donald Trump loses. If Donald Trump wins, these cases, the D.C. case and the Florida case, are gone. They're going to be dismissed immediately upon him entering office. And then all we've got left is the Georgia case, which is a whole, slew of problems of how to handle a state prosecution of an incumbent president. But if he loses, you're looking at both those cases sometime in 2025. Who knows exactly when? There's a slew of pretrial issues still to flesh out.
Got it. Well, we appreciate it as always, Brad. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, anytime.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.